Hello friends, it's been a little while. Not on purpose, I've just been busy and also decompressing and trying to relax post-marathon, but I feel like I should also sit down now that I've had some distance between when it happened to really think about it, reflect on it, and now I feel like I'm ready to talk about it. Not that it was that traumatic, it's just perspective is key when having a well thought out reflection on something. Apologies in advance if you hear any noises. My apartment building is very old and switches to heating on October 15th. Whoever set that rule in place was not around when global warming really started to kick in. It's really hot, so I have to keep the windows open. I've closed them as much as I can, but it is really hot in here. Bear with me. Let's start with before the race, going over the expo, the travel, the getting to Berlin for the first time, first impressions of Berlin. Let's start there. My boyfriend and I left Thursday afternoon. We flew out of Dulles Airport. I mean, all of that was totally fine, nothing super notable. A crazy amount of runners on our flights. It was definitely difficult packing to run a marathon and then also spend some time in Europe after. I had to obviously put most of my running stuff in my personal item bag. The reason being, if I lost my carry-on, I had a carry-on, but you know, a lot of the times they make you check it because the flight is so full. So in the event of that happening and something happening to my stuff, I wanted to make sure that like my sneakers, my clothes, those were just in my hands pretty much the whole time. And that took up pretty much all the room in my backpack. So packing was extremely difficult for this trip, something I haven't had to deal with before when running a race. The flight was fine. Personally, I don't really sleep on planes, boats. I don't sleep well in cars. I've always had that difficulty. My boyfriend does not have that problem. So doing a red eye, knowing I have that problem, if I could go back in time, I would probably book my flight there just during the day so that I could get there in the evening and then just sleep the travel off and not have my sleep schedule as disrupted as it was. I mean, I enjoyed the flight. There was no issues on the flight. It's just I didn't sleep. So I basically pulled an all-nighter a few days out from my marathon. Not ideal. I got there in the morning. We had a layover in Brussels, and flying over Germany was pretty cool. Seeing like how the landscape changes between like the west to the east. And then we got there. The plan was, and I don't know if I would do this again, but I'm also glad we did this since we only had the Friday and the Saturday and then the race was on Sunday. From the airport, go to the expo, which was as horrific as you would imagine. I didn't plan on spending money. I already had purchased the finisher tee ahead of time, and I did New York, you know, last year. I already know what's going to be there. I know how much stuff there is to buy. You know, you think you get through all of it when you've gone through the official merch, and then all of a sudden you go into another room and it's just full of vendors, and I just don't have the money when I've already paid for international airfare to spend on even more swag. So my whole vision was have my boyfriend wait outside, and which I would recommend if you're traveling with someone and you want to do something similar in the future, instead of checking your bag at the expo, because you can't go around with big bags there. It's a safety concern. So he stood outside, and I went in and tried to go as quickly as possible. But of course, there's thousands of people there. I went, you know, midday Friday, and it was super busy already. You have to get your bracelet. I got my bib. I got a bag, had some snacks in it, and I have my finisher tee in that, and that was about it. But of course you have to walk through everything to get out, you know, on purpose. So that was really overwhelming. I mean, given that I was running on no sleep and I was exhausted, it wasn't my favorite thing. It was just so much, it was so loud and so many people trying to get you to go over. And sometimes I love that. I needed to get in and out so we could take an Uber to our hotel and finally check in and relax for a moment. So I did that as quickly as I could, which wasn't that quick. Once we got to our hotel, that was all good. We stayed in Alexanderplatz, and if you're visiting Berlin as a tourist, would I recommend staying there? Not particularly, although it is helpful that it is in the middle of everything. But for the marathon, I thought it was a great spot. A lot of the hotels that are very close to the beginning of the marathon are insanely expensive and fill up very quickly. And getting on the U-Bahn to get to that area was so fast and easy from where we were staying. So I do recommend it. Obviously, all the hotels are very expensive. If you get into the Berlin Marathon lottery, book your hotel same day. Our hotel was fine. We ventured out a little bit to kind of just see like where we were at and take it all in, and that was pretty fun. We had some food, and we were supposed to go to dinner. We had planned to go to dinner, the two of us, that evening, but I went to bed at 7 p.m. instead, and I slept until like 9 the next day. And it was necessary. So the Saturday, my main goal that Saturday was to do a little bit of sightseeing, but to not be walking around too much. Really, I just wanted to take the U-Bahn to that area so that I could see, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. This is where I'm going to try and be. If you've never taken public transport in a different country or city, you kind of just want to make sure you can do it one time to feel confident with that. So that's why we did it, and it was also good for us just to be able to see how it works as well. And it was very easy, very simple. If you are running the race, you get a QR code that if anyone comes on to scan, tickets, you just show them that and they scan that instead for that weekend, which was awesome. We did some walking around. We had schnitzel, which was great, and I did have not a pint of beer, but I guess they weren't doing pints, it's liters, like a half liter of beer, because I was carb loading, of course. Kind of just enjoyed our day. It was obviously a very early night. I laid out all my stuff beforehand, and we went to dinner. We actually met up with someone I know from TikTok, and the three of us had Italian food, which was fantastic, in this really cute neighborhood. It felt like we were actually where the locals live and go. At that point, for the first time, we've basically been in like a tourist land, so it was nice to feel like we're actually like in Berlin, like city Berlin, not, museums or attractions. So that was great. Went home very early night, obviously, and going to bed, I felt like pretty confident and good. I didn't feel like I overdid it during the day, and I felt, like I knew what I was going to do the next day. There was a good plan in place. And then like I was feeling sleepy, and then I just never slept, which is normal, that happens to people, but I just I wasn't feeling great. And when I finally got a little bit of sleep and woke up the next morning, I was so nauseous, and I've never been that nauseous before a race. It was very odd. Of course, I was nervous, but I wasn't that nervous, especially when you wake up early before you can even think about what you're about to do. No, it was really weird. I could hardly drink water, much less try and eat. My poor boyfriend got some pastries and this almost like a biscuit with jam on it, and I felt so bad because it was the perfect stuff for me to eat before, and I was gagging while taking small bites. It was not ideal, but I got ready. That all went pretty smoothly, and I got to the start. Most people got off one U-Bahn stop ahead, but a lot of the locals were no, stay with us, get off at the next one. And that one was way easier when it came to walking to the start. It was really close, so I'm glad I stuck with them. The start village was pretty well organized. There were signs everywhere. It's a pretty lengthy walk to your corral, and it hit me that I got there very early, which is, I always do that, but I was early. I don't know, I just thought there would be more people and it would take longer to get places, especially after doing New York last year. It took time to get to the front, a lot of time. I basically had lived a whole day by the time I was crossing the start line. That was interesting, and then I was kind of regretting, waking up so early when I'd finally drifted off to sleep, but it was too late to worry about that. I did get to hang out in my corral for a very long time, talk to some random people that were there, and it slowly filled up over time. They have big TVs, so you can at least see what's going on at the front. So when the elites and everybody started we all got to see that as well as hear it, which was cool. I was in the second wave of people. So as we were waiting for the beginning of our wave, it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that it was getting warm. We went to a thrift store. We went to many thrift stores in the 10 days we were in Berlin. We went to one specifically for the purpose of me getting some sort of long sleeve, something to wear over my race gear so I'm not too cold in the morning. Ditch that, well, donate it. They have donation bins. I didn't just throw it off. I didn't need it. At New York, I was freezing and like hated taking off my extra layers. Was so sad to lose them. But that was not the case with Berlin. I was, took it off and didn't think about it ever again. And I did that like an hour before I even started. So by the time I started, I was nervous because I had struggled to eat my breakfast, and that's already not good. And then I was also nervous because I could feel the heat and I was already warm. And I sweat a lot. I get warm very easily. I also get cold very easily. I'm like a very difficult to maintain houseplant. But I knew if I was going to get too hot, then I was going to be sweating a lot, and it's really hard to put down like the amount of water I believe my body needs while also running for that amount of time. I just knew, okay, this is going to be tough. So going into this race, I had 3 goals. 1, finish the race. 2, PR. My marathon last year in New York was my PR, and I believe I did that in 4:16. Third goal was sub 4. So I start running and I am running strong. I also use the Rally app. Friends and family record voice notes that would play at each mile of the marathon, which was super sweet. And those were playing in my ears all throughout. I think genuinely those voice messages got me through the race because it was just so tough to keep going. But hearing like different friends and family encourage me throughout was top tier. So I highly recommend doing that if you are running any kind of race coming up. I would check that out. Not an ad. I just really loved it. Yeah, as we got started, I mean, it was beautiful. The crowds were amazing and the energy was electric, but it was just getting really hot really fast. I had 3 different spots that I was seeing my boyfriend. I'm trying to remember what they were. I know the first one was about a little over 6 miles in, and then there was one probably around 12, a little over halfway, and then one that was like 23.5 or something. And I was doing so well at the first one, and then the second one not as good, and by the third was like he didn't bother recording me or anything. Like he had to tell me like, you're too close not to finish at this point. But at the time I got to the halfway mark, I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't like my legs were tired. I think everyone started to realize like, they weren't feeling well. I started to look around and was seeing like people who I believe started in the first wave were like around me, and I wasn't running particularly fast. For my first half of the marathon, I was just barely under 2 hours, which is not ideal. I was hoping to be around like 1:57, give or take a little bit, to give myself some wiggle room if I had issues in the second half. But I didn't want to give myself I didn't want to burn myself out in the beginning. My second half was like 2:08 or 2:09. I moved up like 200 places between those two, or maybe 2,000. I will double check that and include it. I moved up because so many people had to stop and walk. I walked many times during that race. Every time they have sprinklers on the course, every time I had a sprinkler, like I made sure I walked under it and took like a moment because it was that bad. In terms of hydration, so I know I had like gone back and forth many times about what I was gonna do. I didn't have a hydration pack. I did use my handheld, and using a handheld in Berlin was actually awesome because I went to every single water stop and they give you a plastic cup. It's not paper. Anyone who's ran the Berlin Marathon knows what this is like. Going through the water stations, I had to like completely disassociate. Running and the sounds it makes over that many plastic cups on the ground, I can hear it in my mind right now. It is horrible. I took the cup, dumped it in, and anytime I saw my boyfriend, I also had him top me off. And so on water, I was extremely good and I didn't have any issues or run out at any point. So if you're going back and forth, I would recommend doing that. I walked through every water station. I wasn't gonna try and run through it. It just got really difficult. And then after a certain point, every single medical station, tons of people. Seeing more and more people have to like take time because the heat was really bad. It was like 80 degrees, very few clouds in the sky, and weirdly humid for Berlin. I feel like I've been lied to about what Berlin is like and that part of Europe weather-wise. The more I was running, the slower I was going. It got to a point where when I was halfway through, I knew, okay, sub 4 is probably not gonna happen. I wasn't even sure if I would PR, which I did by about 7 minutes, 4:09. Didn't think I would. I wasn't sure if I was gonna finish. And I was looking around and looking at my photos as well. There definitely were people from like the first wave. People were hurting. I saw many people throwing up and gurneys on the ground with medical staff helping people just like lined up next to each other. It got to the point where it's no longer about like the race, and makes me think that in the future they're gonna have to start changing some of these dates, because as someone who went through a summer and trained in DC humidity, I was struggling so much. I can't imagine what it's like for someone not from a place that gets that kind of heat and humidity, or if they just came from the southern hemisphere and have gone through winter, they're not prepared. They're not acclimated to the heat in that way. None of us were. I did not see Harry Styles. I'll just put that out there. So eventually I made it to the end, somehow, some way. There were a lot of false Brandenburg gates. And you might be wondering, what do you mean false? I was so desperate to see it because you're in like a city, like government buildings and offices area, where you can't see very far. It's just a lot of buildings around. And anytime I saw some sort of like sky walkway or something, I was like, is that it, please? Obviously not. I know what it looks like. By the time you run through it, which you run through it and then you run, you know, away from it, it doesn't end there. It does not end at the Brandenburg Gate. It ends past it. Yeah, I made it to the end, and it was just like, I think the feelings I had were just shock that it was over and I actually did it, and just a lot. Immediately it was mixed emotions. I was obviously proud of myself and happy that I finished, but at the same time I was so excited about how my training had gone and so confident that I was going to be able to run a sub 4 marathon. And in terms of running, it wasn't close. 4:09 is not close. Like, I wasn't a 4:02. That was tough. And so I was trying to just kind of like put that aside immediately after I finished, and I PR'd, and I should be really proud of myself for that. But that definitely was a little bit in the back of my mind. The more time I had to think about it, and the more I saw other people sharing like how much they struggled with that race, honestly, the better I felt and the more validated I felt, because I spent 18 weeks just grueling through this training and trying to be as consistent as possible. And the mental game you're constantly playing up with yourself of, should I pull back and will that be better in the long run for this particular workout, or is this the time I need to push myself forward? I just really thought I had nailed it. But yeah, the heat and the humidity coupled with the lack of sleep and not being able to eat very much that morning. I did have all of my gels throughout. It was miserable gagging some of those down at the end. I was having electrolytes throughout the race, but it didn't feel like enough. My stomach did start killing me at a certain point, and the same thing happened in New York, and that feeling never happened during like my 20 milers. So that's something I need to look into. I think the heat was probably a big part of that, and I wish it wasn't so hot for many reasons, but one of them would be to make sure that perhaps it was just because I was sweating so much and having to have so much water and needed more salt than what I had practiced with because of the heat. But it's hard to know these things, you know. It's one big experiment that you can't really repeat. And there's so many different factors and variables involved, and you're trying to figure out which one is the reason for like my body responding a particular way, but it's impossible to really know. There's too few experiments done. This is my 3rd marathon. In the future, I hope to do one in cooler temperatures so I can figure out Did I actually my electrolyte situation? It would have worked if it was just 10 degrees cooler or not. So after the race, you got a lot of food options, water. It was very nice, the whole setup actually. I did really like it. It was huge though, and it's definitely hard to meet up with people after. So you do need to figure out that designated meeting spot ahead of time. But I got a little Kinder bar and I had non-alcoholic beer, which I love a good non-alcoholic beer. But I needed a beer after that. It was nice of them though. I did enjoy it. I sat down, waited for my boyfriend to find me. He just said sit down, his phone was gonna die, and he found me. I had taken off my shoes. I was just sipping on this non-alcoholic beer and eating a Kinder bar and kind of just happily waiting for him. He found me and we were talking and laughing about like seeing each other and just kind of catching up on things that had happened. And then it was like, oh, like there's this person on the flight from Brussels to Berlin. We did not sit together. He was sitting next to this guy who was also running the race, and he was like, oh, I told him we would meet up with him, like ends, like let me just see if he's nearby. And I think if I had a stomach ache or was really upset or something, but I was fine. The longer I can keep my shoes off and sip on this beer. He waves and I turn over and my cousin, Jen, quick important like context, all of my family lives in Wales and England. I only see them every few years. So my cousin and her boyfriend Jack, they had flown to Berlin to surprise me. Complete and total shock. Obviously I started crying and that was super sweet. That was really amazing and I can't believe everyone was able to keep that from me, especially my boyfriend. All hopped on the U-Bahn and they went to go look around and see some sights. I showered and we all had dinner together that evening. So overall, I mean, in terms of a marathon day, it was pretty perfect. So much fun despite the heat. The crowds were incredible. I saw so many, like at least 5 Welsh people there, which was great. And at the end, there was this guy, he must have been in his like 60s or 70s, running ahead of me, which was both humbling and inspiring. And his jersey was the Welsh flag, and it was just very fitting while my voice note from the app was playing the song that my parents and uncle and aunt and cousins were playing on the guitar and like singing Go Katie Go. They all live in Wales, and then having this Welsh flag in front of me to get me to the end felt very poetic and perfect. It was an amazing race despite not hitting all of the goals I wanted to, but I'm still pretty damn proud of myself. After the marathon, the very next day, my boyfriend and I hopped on a train and went to Prague for a couple days, which was amazing and I loved it. Before coming back to Berlin, it was nice to get some distance and then come back again as tourists and not runners and just kind of do it differently. So in total, we were gone for 10 days, ate a lot of amazing food, did a crazy amount of shopping and thrifting, including this. Little to no extra room in our luggage, which was a problem at the airport, but we made it work. We'll make a video about some of the stuff I got. It was amazing to not run, to not do a single physical activity other than walk around and take in these amazing cities that we were in. I love Berlin, really love Berlin. I will absolutely be back. Really amazing, very cool city. I got a tattoo while I was there to commemorate this whole experience, not necessarily for the race itself, but rather how I feel training for this race changed me as a person. I feel that in comparison to anything else I've ever done in my life, honestly, much less trained for, I really learned to put myself first and care for myself and appreciate and respect myself in a way I wasn't doing before, and that was very special. There was a lot of self-love there. It's kind of difficult to show. Even though I did not run a sub-4 marathon, I know it was in there. I mean, I'm not giving myself credit for achieving that because I didn't, but I know it was within myself and I could have, given all of the perfect conditions, done it. But that is the beauty of running, is you will never have, really ever, the perfect conditions, and you just have to make it work and do your best. So what is next? That's a great question. Well, first of all, I am running the Cherry Blossom 10 miler that takes place in DC. I did it this year and I'm doing it again in 2026. The lottery for that actually opens in early January. So you might be thinking, Katie, well, how do you know you're gonna run it if there's a lottery? That's a great question. I'm actually an ambassador. So I found that out right before I left for Berlin, which was so exciting, and I can't wait to represent such an amazing and historic race in a city I love so much and be a part of it again. I feel really, really lucky. So I will obviously be sharing about that and the training for it. I think I am going to try and train to get quicker. Since I've shown myself I was able to do it with this marathon training, let's see in a shorter distance what else I can achieve. On top of that, I will probably run a half marathon. I don't know which one yet, but I'd love to PR my half marathon at some point. The first one I ever ran is still my PR, even though I've ran so many others since, which is kind of annoying. I think I'll still throw my name into the lottery for Chicago. I didn't for Sydney or Tokyo. That's already gone by. The reason being I've spent so much money going to Berlin this year. It's not in the cards for me to do those right now, but in the future I would love to. I do plan on it. But Chicago is the only other American-based world major that has a lottery. I really probably should just keep throwing my name into the bucket, even though this would be my fourth time entering into the lottery, but that's fine. It's still a plane ride away, so if I don't get it, I don't get it. No biggie. I might do the Marine Corps next year. That's like my local marathon, and I've never done it before. I think that would be really cool. And it starts early in the morning, which would be key given what temperatures it could be at this time of year. That's actually happening next weekend here in DC. I also just might not do one if I don't get into Chicago. Maybe if I have like a wedding or something going on for the Marine Corps, or I just don't feel like it, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll focus on some shorter distance and just try and get faster so that the following year I will be way faster, and instead of a sub 4, maybe we'll be aiming for a sub 3. Watch out, Harry Styles. I've been slowly getting back into running, very slowly. I've really been focusing more on weightlifting right now, as well as cross training on stair climber and the bike, and I feel great. No injuries, no issues post-marathon, but flexibility, mobility, strength, I was focusing on those this time last year after I finished New York last year, knowing that I was going to end up doing Berlin, and it worked out so well. So I'm just gonna keep getting stronger and taking care of myself and see where that gets me. Thank you so much for the support, the kind messages, and just the sense of community that I've found here. I plan to make other videos as well I have a lot of thoughts about the running community and how it's changing, and also the culture of running and how it's rapidly changing, and I would love to share some of that here, as well as my training for these shorter races that are coming up slowly but surely. So I will be sharing all of that here. And yeah, you can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will see you next time.